The only reason that there are paved roads with street signs, not to mention modern cities, is because of the European settlers who came here and brought civilization along with them. If the so-called indigenous people want street signs named after them, they should have figured out how to build streets and towns in the first place and write a language. They didn't. We're all familiar with the idea of comic relief in various art forms. Its job is to relieve tension when things are getting a little too heavy. And unfortunately, comic relief isn't just limited to the movies or the theater. In real life, as we all know, there are actually millions of people who have committed themselves to entertaining the masses, even when everything seems to be falling apart. They are the pressure relief valve for the world. And I'm talking, of course, about the nation of Canada. No matter what's going on, war in Iran, stock market collapse, airplanes crashing, the people of Canada remain laser focused on beclowning themselves for our amusement. It is their purpose in life. Long after Canada officially becomes a colony of India and literally no Canadians have a job or the capacity to feed themselves, they'll spend their last dying breaths finding ways to entertain us here in America. And we should be grateful for that. And as if to prove my point, the big story in Canada this week, I won't even do the whole intro. I'll let one of Canada's many fake news outlets take the reins from here. Watch.
How's that for grabbing your attention? It's the kind of ritual that's been going on here for thousands of years. In Kitsilano Friday, it happened alongside a more contemporary one.
Is today an incredible day or what? Woo!
The story of this street name change is both a practical one of day-to-day urban living and an emotional turning point for the Musqueam Nation.
Our ancestors were forced to speak English. They were forced to do away with our language. And if we're walking reconciliation, we walk together.
The street formerly known as Trutch had been named after BC's first lieutenant governor, whose views and policies about First Nations people are now recognized as racist and wrong. The Musqueam have long been troubled by having to look at it, and there was unanimous support at City Council to take it down.
So they have some obese guy in feathers and face paint dancing in a suburban neighborhood as the mayor says this is an incredible day. And he does a little woo to really get the crowd going. And then we learn, thanks to another obese guy in feathers, whose name is Chief Wayne, which is pretty funny all by itself, that the Musqueam people are mad that they were forced to speak English. And to that end, they're getting rid of a street sign named after a civil engineer named Joseph Trutch. And according to the Canadian news anchor, who speaks in the most patronizing tone imaginable, Joseph Trutch is a very mean and racist man. So it's good to get rid of this random street sign. And before we go any further here, a couple of points need to be made right off the bat. First of all, Joseph Trutch contributed more to British Columbia than any of these overweight men wearing costumes or their ancestors ever did. He was the civil engineer behind the creation of the old Alexandra suspension bridge, which is one of the main reasons British Columbia grew into a viable province. It became a lot easier to move gold in and out of British Columbia and later on automobiles because of that bridge. And then Trutch became BC's chief commissioner of land and works. And in that capacity, he didn't allow the primitive tribes to continue wasting the potential of all this land. And therefore, now they're vilifying him. Secondly, the idea that the white man is the reason that Musqueam people never had street signs in their language is absurd. They never had street signs in their language because they never had streets or signs or a written language. Men like Joseph Trutch came in and brought all of that. They brought language and civilization and commerce to what is now British Columbia. But instead of celebrating Joseph Trutch, they're now slandering him and taking down his street sign. Here's a fun fact that that'll ruin your next grocery run. Unfortunately, over 85% of the grass-fed beef that you're paying premium prices for, well, it's imported. Congratulations, you've been funding foreign cattle operations while thinking you're supporting American farmers. Just great. But here's the thing, GoodRanchers.com actually gives you what you think you're already buying. Shocking concept, right? 100% American source meat, born here, raised here, harvested here, not shipped from who knows where with mystery ingredients and questionable safety standards. No antibiotics ever, no added hormones, no seed oils, just meat. Revolutionary concept, I know. And they deliver it straight to your door for added convenience as well. I enjoy ordering steaks for the family, getting to grill them up on busy weekends. It saves me time. Kids love them. It's delicious stuff. It's a win-win all around. Look, July 4th is coming up. Nothing says celebrating America quite like actually buying American meat for once. Subscribe to any Good Ranchers box today and you'll get free meat for life. That's free Wagyu burgers, hot dogs, bacon, chicken wings in every single box. Plus, use my code Walsh and knock an extra $40 off your order. Visit goodranchers.com. Use my code Walsh for your free meat for life and that extra $40 off. Good Ranchers, American meat delivered. And here's what they're replacing it with. Get ready for this.
Every symbol has a sound, and they're all sounded out.
Well, the English translation is Musqueam View. The new legal name of the street is written in characters from the North American phonetic alphabet, a system developed by linguists to express words from First Nation languages. Here's Mayor Sim having a go at it.
Today, we officially renamed Trutch Street to Shmuckwiam Awesome Street.
It's fine by me. It's progress, put it that way.
Shmuckwian Awesome Street, I believe is what he said. He was either pronouncing the street name or he was sneezing. I'm not really sure. It's impossible to tell. Now, there's one thing I will say is if you use that word in Scrabble and hit a triple word score, it would be worth 85,000 points. That's the good news. The other big good news is that some of the best deadpan comedians in the world live in Canada. They just don't realize it. They are absolutely, completely, 100% sincere when they say that it's progress to replace a normal street sign with one that is incomprehensible. I mean, you might think that human progress means colonizing Mars or developing self-driving cars or, curing diseases or something like that. But in Canada, progress means something very different. It means making it impossible to order pizza to your house because nobody knows what the hell the street sign says. That's progress in Canada. And never mind pizzas. What happens when somebody calls 911? And the funniest thing about this whole situation, of course, is that the sign isn't actually written in the language of the primitive tribe because they didn't have a written language. Instead, as you heard, it's written in some kind of fake language invented by academics who are attempting to transfer the primitive language of the Musqueam people into written English, which is why it looks like a Wi-Fi password. A very strong Wi-Fi password, but a Wi-Fi password nonetheless. Either that or it looks like maybe a mathematical equation written by a schizophrenic on the walls of his padded room, like the kind of equation that could either be total nonsense or the key to interstellar space travel. You never know. Now, if this were a South Park episode, you wouldn't need to add anything to it. By itself, it is a self-contained, entertaining premise for an episode. Canadians who are upset about colonialism decide to invent some gibberish language to pay tribute to the illiterate tribes who hate the guy who built British Columbia. It's perfect. No notes, as the kids would say. But believe it or not, it gets better. Watch.
About half the Kits residents we spoke with told us they support the change. Others, though, said they were frustrated at the prospect of updating IDs and documents in an alphabet they don't know. And the neighboring Squamish Nation weighed in, saying they weren't properly consulted. But as the new signs were unveiled Friday, it was nothing short of an historic moment. Musqueam people seeing their ancient language live on.
Did you get that? The neighboring Squamish Nation was upset by this new sign because they weren't consulted. Can you imagine? It's almost as if there were a lot of primitive tribes that lived in that area back in the day, and it's almost as if they all took land from the tribes who were there before them. And it's almost as if it's a waste of time to try to appease any of these people because you're only making them more emboldened and more entitled and more annoying. And there's another problem here as well. One of the many things that irks me about these kinds of stunts, even though it's happening in Canada, it is funny and we can laugh at it. But the part that irks me is that it gives the so-called indigenous people something they didn't earn. The only reason that there are paved roads with street signs, not to mention modern cities, is because of the European settlers who came here and brought civilization along with them. If the so-called indigenous people want street signs named after them, they should have figured out how to build streets and towns in the first place and write a language. They didn't. Therefore, they don't get to name the streets. It's pretty simple. What makes the situation all the more galling is that if you look at the current state of British Columbia, they have much bigger problems than catering to the delusional whims of obese Indian activists. This is what Vancouver looks like right now. You can see it there. This is footage from the YouTube channel Life in Canada by Lucy. It was shot in this week in downtown Vancouver, British Columbia. Block after block, you see tents, homeless people doing drugs, mentally ill vagrants freaking people out. if Canada were run by people who took themselves seriously, by moral men who wanted the best for their citizens, this would be the only thing that they'd be talking about. They wouldn't mention climate change. They wouldn't talk about tariffs or Iran. They certainly wouldn't talk about random street signs in the suburbs. They do something about the collapse of their country, which is becoming more and more apparent by the day. But Canada's leaders are not interested in averting the collapse of their country. They're only interested in accelerating it. On the bright side, at least they're giving everyone else in the world something to laugh about in the process. And that is why the Canadians, who just changed the name of a random street so that it honors a strong Wi-Fi password instead of a great man, are today canceled. If you'd like to see what else I have to say, you can access my full show by going to dailywire.com or by going to the Matt Walsh Show Twitter page. Hope to see you there. Godspeed.